I hope you've had an opportunity to try this out because it is important to try this out for yourself and get comfortable with what we're doing. So this time, what I want to do is I want to send a post. So we've already got a format for getting the data, and we already saw within Postman that we can post some information. So let's do a combination here, and instead of load, this one is, let's build another element here. We'll give it a button. And instead of load, we'll just call it send. And instead of send load one, it'll be send one. It will keep the button class, so we have a nice, beautiful button. Next, let's grab this, and we're going to copy a little bit of what we've done here. So we're actually posting. And the data format, so we want to keep it within a form type format. Also, let's get rid of this, or let's copy this one. And instead of load one, it's going to be send. And instead of load one over here, let's do send one. So we keep it consistent there. So this one, send one. So that should hook up our button. So we're doing posts. If we want to post to a post, just like we saw with Postmaster, when we send a post over to posts and we send it as a post format, then we're able to actually send that information. So let's go take a closer look in the headers, what we've sent through. And we see that we're sending all of the information. We're sending it as an as basically as a URL, encoded URL. And that's what we're going to do this time as well. And we're expecting to see that 201 error. And we can also see all of that information sitting in here. So whenever we're requesting that data, we're getting 200 whenever we make the connection. So when I do the page reload here, and if I do load one, we see it's coming back and we're retrieving that data. So that's all working properly. So now we know that all of this stuff works. We can post, we can get, and so on. So let's send over some data. And for the purposes of this lesson, we're going to just keep it within a form format. And then after, we're going to make it a little bit more dynamic, where we're going to create a form, we're going to grab that input from the form, and we're going to allow the ability to grab that information from the HTML and send it into our database. So no more to simulate what actually happens when we post information from our website to our server. So next, let's set up our parameters. So we've got first, and or maybe we'll do a different name. So John, and we're keeping it all within one string. So last equals JSON, and company equals whatever. And also I'll show you what happens if I add in one more value here. So this is another. So there we go. So we've got our request, and the send, we're sending it over as. So we've added the data in there. We're sending data over, and there's one other thing that we need to include, because we need to make sure that we're updating the request headers. So the request headers, the XHR request headers, have to be done after open has been called. So if this was just a regular post, we would do XHR set request header, and then here is where we'd specify content type. And the content type has to be within a form format. So that's what we're actually simulating. Application -x. And this is going to be the same thing that we saw in Postman. That's why Postman is actually really super useful, because we know that it's working. So the only problem here is that it's not being encoded properly. So we are sending over this post, but it has to be within that same format. And we know that the form format, so the x-ww form encoded format works, but if we do like for form data, it might not necessarily work within the same format. So let's try that out and send. So there we go. So we get our response back, and basically what happened here is that basically means that we actually submitted our request and we were successful. So that's the way that the JSON server works, is when you do submit a request, and it retrieves that information. And if it's successful, then it passes all those parameters, all that JSON object right back to you. And then, of course, you can make use of this within the page as well. And we'll show you how to do that in the upcoming lessons. So go ahead, try this out for yourself, and I'll show you some more really cool things that you can do with your JSON server coming up.